Hey everyone, Peter Swain here with Hack Mankind, and I'm here with Sean Callagy. Sean, the founder of Callagy Law and Unblinded, and our resident mindset and mentality expert and panelist. Sean, we talked about backstage about the complexity of communication. Where are you at with that?
So yeah, it's been coming up for me a lot because, and this does relate directly to mindset and motivation, because one of the great inhibitors of motivation are relationship challenges of all sorts with our life partners, our friends, our family, our business partners, our employees, our team, our staff. So what is present for me, Peter, is that we think we are communicating what is in our mind and our nervous system with the meaning that we have. And what is most often occurring is something quite different. And if anybody's ever played the game of telephone, and you tell somebody and they tell somebody and they tell somebody and they tell somebody, by the time you get to the fourth or fifth person, there's been meaningful change in the message. And typically there's meaningful change by the time the first person repeats. By the time you get to the 10th or 15th person, it is a completely different message. So, and this doesn't just happen in a game of telephone. It happens in life. It happens in every communication about the meaning of things, why we're doing something, what we're doing, all those things, the what, where, when, how, why, all of those things are constantly changed. And where can even get a little bit messy, but where is, usually the most simple. It's where is, at 347 Main Street in Richfield Park, New Jersey, which happens to be the house that I lived in as a child. That can get a little messed up because they can transpose numbers. The town can be wrong, the street can be wrong, but there are very few variables, relatively speaking, versus when we start talking about a vision for a company. When we start talking about the mapping and planning for a company. When we start talking about agreements about you'll do this and I'll do that, when it comes to marketing, coaching, legal, accounting, friendship, anything, meaning becomes diluted and distorted with the best of intentions. With less than the best of intentions, it gets exponentially even more complicated. So what's present for me on this Fun Friday is how critically important it is to realize one fundamental that explains all of this. The disagreement begins the moment there is the absence of affirmative agreement. So disagreement begins the moment there's the absence of affirmative agreement. But it's not just when we think we have agreement, it's when we are both repeating and reading back the same thing. And even then, we probably have some misalignment. And final on this point, Peter, and then I'll kick it back to you, is for all of us to realize that we're going to have, if we're going to accelerate and we're going to grow and we're going to make things happen, we're going to have a lot of complex dynamics with humans. It's just the nature of living. I've represented people in cases where best friends ended up one choking the other, stealing companies, accusing one another of being criminals, putting people in prison, all sorts of different things that have occurred. I've seen relationships where people had no idea that their spouse was addicted to a war video game, traveling all over the world, meeting people of the opposite sex. I've seen and heard endless series of dynamics that are completely and totally insane, and they all are rooted in the complexity of human communication. Much of this is beautifully outlined, not the solutions as much, in some of Malcolm Gladwell's work, like Talking to Strangers. It doesn't speak to this issue directly, but it speaks to it partially. And the solution, Peter, the solution is not perfection. The solution is a healthy balancing of how we make the most optimal decisions with the least amount of unnecessary risk, but realize that growth of our business, growth of our life comes with some inherent risks. And we're all going to have things go in ways that are painful at times. The question is, how can we mitigate that in a beautiful time balancing? And that is truly an area of mastery. Final. This included, my experiences included me walking into a gentleman's office that had a massive law firm in Florida, He had pictures of him with President Bush, the governor of Florida at the time, John McCain, Alonzo Mourning, Hall of Fame basketball player, Dan Marino, Hall of Fame quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, and an endless array of him and these superstars. Articles in the newspaper about him donating $1 million to save a hospital and other things. And at the end of the day, his entire law firm was a Ponzi scheme. He had stolen $1 billion from people, and he's now serving 45 years in prison. And Peter, I sat across from this man, and to me, it became quite obvious very quickly that he was lying. And it was very difficult to accept because he had 300 employees, yachts, buildings, everything. And the former head of white collar crimes for the FBI, when we took a break in the meeting, said, "Yeah, this sounds great." Who came down to vet this with us. And I'm like, are you insane? So yeah, it ain't easy. Peter, back to you.
Beautiful. I don't know if you've read or listened to Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference.
Chris Voss and Never Split the Difference is coming on The Real Raw next week, and I have read his work, yes.
Phenomenal. Right, that's a Real Raw. Not what day is that?
That is, I believe, Thursday, June 29th.
Okay, so pause for everybody. Make sure you tune into that, because that's if you ignore everything else we said, that can be your takeaway, because this guy is ridiculous. So for anyone that doesn't know, Chris Voss was the head negotiator for the FBI crisis and hostage negotiator. And I'm literally only a couple chapters in, and what just resonated with me as you were talking is, in a hostage negotiation, the FBI will have up to 5 people listening to a call. And depending on the severity, that's literally the minimum people they'll put on a call. 5 people. So if you think you're truly listening to somebody across the table, well, the FBI to believe that you're truly listening means that they think they need 5 of you, not 1 of you. And they literally have somebody listening for tells, somebody listening for intent, somebody listening for mood. And there was some just classic things in there, like, anytime people are saying we, there's probably only 1 of them. And anytime they're saying me, there's probably 4 of them. And so as you described this guy's wall, my first thoughts are, why would somebody need to prove it to that degree? It just screams, I'm compensating for something over here. But I think absolutely, I remember we call it the Chinese whispers game in the UK, not the telephone game, but it's the same effect. And yeah, after 5 or 6 things, I think the one thing I would say is, if I was to add anything to what you said, and I almost don't think there is anything to add, is what truly matters inside this for me is always the person's intent. We are so quick to judge others on their intent and us on our actions, or vice versa. Things do go wrong, things screw up. If you trust your gut in your read of somebody's heart, then maybe giving them a pass is not a bad call. But yeah, aside from that, Sean, I would love to ask more smart questions, but I think that was beautifully succinct and beautifully put. So thank you so much for bringing that to myself and everybody else. Any final thoughts before I wrap up?
Yeah, final thought is, this is loving people unconditionally, ... with boundaries. So beautiful people in the world, but misalignment, misunderstanding, with the best of intention creates massive exposure, and with the worst of intention, potential catastrophes. So love people, but have boundaries, ask questions, and ask yourself this: why are people saying what they're saying and not saying what they're not? And even me, Peter, who lives in this space, I make immense mistakes as well, because our emotions get running. We like people, we want to see the best, and we can avoid very, very easily a lot of the pain that people endure from making the wrong relationships, the wrong investments, and the wrong moves. So today is keep yourself happy and fresh, trust and love, but love yourself enough to ask questions and gain immense clarity. So thanks, and have a beautiful day.
Perfect. You've been listening to Peter Swain and Sean Callagy on www.hackmankind.com. Tune in for more. And Sean, I will see you next week. Thank you so much.
See you, Peter. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.